Leambi Cave Incident. In late November of 1982, 3 young men made their way to Leambi Cave in Caldwell County, Kentucky. One boy was 18 years old and lived with epilepsy. His friends knew he had episodes but had never witnessed one underground. They planned to stay overnight in the cave, bringing blankets, food, and supplies. They reached the entrance just after sunset and walked deeper into the passage. The walls widened into a broader chamber large enough to stand upright. Burn marks on the rock showed signs of past fires from previous overnight stays. They arranged stones into a fire ring and started a large fire. The fire warmed the chamber and they sat around talking and laughing. Suddenly, the 18-year-old stiffened, with his hands curled tight and jaw clenched. His eyes rolled back as the seizure began with violent, uncontrollable convulsions. His arms shot outward, his legs kicked against the dirt, and his body jerked powerfully. His friends grabbed his shoulders, trying to pin him safely. His torso twisted in a final convulsion, and he rolled directly toward the fire pit. His shirt touched the burning wood and flames spread across his torso within seconds. One friend lunged forward, trying to pull off the burning shirt, but the flames were too intense. The other grabbed a blanket and smothered part of the flame. They dragged him back violently by his ankles across the rock floor. His shirt had burned away nearly completely, with what remained clinging in melted patches. The seizure stopped, and the boy lay groaning with skin blistered, red, raw, and peeling. One friend stayed with him while the other grabbed a flashlight and ran for help. He ran through the woods to the nearest farmhouse, and the homeowner called emergency services. Local rescue authorities, volunteer firefighters, and EMS units mobilized immediately. Back inside, the injured boy lay trembling with skin continuing to blister. Rescuers arrived with flashlights, blankets, and medical gear. They found him lying beside the fire remnants, barely conscious. They stabilized his airway, wrapped him in sterile covers, and moved him to a stretcher. The extraction was exhausting, with the stretcher bumping along uneven rocks and scraping walls. At one tight squeeze, they angled the stretcher nearly vertical to get it through. The stretcher finally emerged from the cave, and he was handed to the waiting EMS team. He was taken to a hospital equipped to treat severe burn trauma and survived with serious burns. Blue Springs Cave Incident. On 11th June 1988, 4 divers arrived at Blue Springs in Madison County, Florida. 3 were U.S. Navy personnel, and 1 was a teenage son of one of them. They had standard open water scuba certifications, but no cave diving certification. Their equipment was minimal lights, standard scuba tanks, and basic regulators. They descended into the horseshoe room, a large chamber where sunlight penetrated the water. They found the ledge leading down into the cross-under tunnel. 3 of the 4 divers entered the tunnel, with the teenager staying behind. Their minimal lights pushed back the darkness just enough to reveal the passage ahead. They finned forward, stirring up fine silt that covered the floor and walls. The silt hung suspended, reducing visibility from tens of feet to inches within seconds. They proceeded approximately 350 feet into the tunnel, far beyond where the entrance was visible. Around the 350-foot mark, disorientation set in, with silt obscuring everything. Without adequate illumination or cave training, they lost all sense of direction. The divers became separated as each moved independently, trying to locate the exit. One of the 3 managed to navigate back to the horseshoe room, where the teenager waited. 2 divers remained lost in the murky darkness. They found a jump line and followed it to the main permanent guideline. Disoriented, they moved the wrong way along the line. Their air supplies depleted as they continued searching for the exit under stress. The first diver's tank emptied at 350 feet from the entrance, with 0 visibility. He drowned, unable to reach the entrance or breathable air. The second diver's air supply reached 0 moments later, and he also drowned. The surviving father and son realized the 2 were not returning. They attempted recovery and succeeded in bringing 1 drowned diver back to the horseshoe room. Approximately 30 minutes later, 2 certified cave divers emerged from the main tunnel. They found the second drowned diver suspended near the ceiling and recovered his body. 2 Navy personnel had drowned less than 400 feet from the entrance, in a passage routinely navigated by trained cave divers. Perie Cave Incident. On Monday, 8th August 1977, 2 teenagers entered a cave near Perie, Alabama. Scott Mitchell and Ken Grund were both 15 years old. They had no guide, no map, and no formal plan. At first, the main passage was wide enough to walk upright with a high ceiling. As they continued deeper, they noticed bats hanging from the ceiling. They scooped up mud from the floor and threw it upward. The bats scattered in a sudden rush of wings, and the boys chased them. They stopped navigating and started reacting, taking turns without consideration. When they decided to leave, they found nothing they recognized. The cave was far more complex than they realized, with passages branching unpredictably. They moved slowly, trying to reason their way back, but every turn looked the same. Eventually, the walking passages stopped offering useful options. They entered a crawlway that looked worn and used. The crawlway twisted, steepened, and then branched multiple times. Each branch ended in solid rock after several minutes of crawling. Crawling exhausted them far more than walking, with knees slamming into stone and elbows scraped raw. Hours passed with the crawl space becoming their entire world. Then 1 flashlight went out, and the remaining beam was already weak. After nearly 8 hours underground, around 6 p.m., they lay down completely spent. Their bodies pressed into cold mud and stone. Sometime later, they heard a faint sound that was human. They had been found by chance. A Sunday school outing group was exploring a different section. The group made their way to the boys and guided them out. Scott Mitchell and Ken Grund emerged alive after being lost for hours in the crawlways. Sumidero Yochi Cave Incident. In March 1977, an expedition of 4 entered Sumidero Yochi Cave System in Chiapas, Mexico. Carmen Swallow, Chris Allers, Warren Anderson, and Norm Pace were tasked with running a phone line down to Camp Wine. They were in their early 30s and experienced underground. The route took them to a cable ladder that descended into a narrow canal with flowing water. The water flowed toward a waterfall further downstream. They rigged a safety line with bolts at the top of the ladder, at the bottom, and above the falls. At the base of the ladder, the system was clipped into a carabiner. Norm Pace descended first, climbing down as water noise grew louder. He transitioned into the flowing canal and clipped into the safety line. He began stringing the phone line downstream. Suddenly, without warning, the safety line released. The water seized Pace and dragged him over the edge of the falls. The sudden slack arrested his movement partway down, suspending him directly within the waterfall. 30 cubic feet per second of water slammed into his body, pinning him upside down. Water filled his nose and mouth, leaving him unable to breathe. Pace managed to force a partial rotation and shoved his hard hat against his face. The helmet created a tiny pocket of space between his airway and the rushing water. Above, the rest of the group could do nothing with the waterfall drowning out communication. 15 minutes passed, then 20, with Pace appearing motionless. The group believed he was almost certainly dead. They loosened the rope from the top bolt as a body recovery attempt. As the rope slackened, Pace's position shifted slightly, moving him out of the core of the waterfall. Against all expectation, Norm Pace was still alive. The others diverted into an alternate passage that ran around the waterfall. They approached Pace from behind and passed him a rope. He transferred off the compromised safety line and pulled himself out of the water. He descended away from the waterfall and was taken to the hospital. An analysis revealed the canal safety line had been clipped into a non-locking carabiner. The constant buffeting of water had worked the gate open, releasing the line. Pace survived because of chance and presence of mind, creating a tiny air pocket beneath his helmet for over 20 minutes. 10-Mile Pit Incident. On the 20th of March 2002, 2 young friends decided to explore a cave. Joel Brooks was 24 years old and Josh Almond was 23. They were in Knoxville, Tennessee at a cave called 10-Mile Pit. The cave was located right next to a suburban golf course. A few days earlier, they had discovered the cave entrance with the gate open. On Wednesday evening, they decided to explore deeper, but they made a critical mistake. They brought only a rope and a flashlight, no helmets, no harnesses, no proper safety equipment. 10-Mile Pit had a 75-foot deep entrance with 4 dangerous sections, a 15-foot free drop, a 40-foot mud slope, a 10-foot climb, and a final 20-foot drop to a stream. The 2 men began their descent into the darkness. They successfully navigated the first 3 sections. Josh Almond was near the top of the final 20-foot drop when disaster struck. He suddenly lost his grip on the rock. In a fraction of a second, he lost control completely. Almond tumbled down the slope, bouncing against rock and mud. He went over the final drop and fell through the air. He landed hard beside the stream at the bottom. The impact was brutal. Brooks called down to his friend from above. Almond responded but was badly injured. He had hurt his shoulder and head and couldn't climb back up. Brooks climbed down to try and help, but Almond's injuries were too severe for him to climb. Brooks made the difficult choice to leave and get help. He climbed back up the 75-foot pit alone. When he emerged, he ran across the golf course fairway. Golfers watched in surprise as the mud-covered man sprinted past. Brooks reached a house and called emergency services. The Knox County Cave Rescue Team was dispatched. Professional rescuers descended with expert equipment. They placed Almond on a backboard and secured him in a rescue litter. The team used mechanical systems to haul him up slowly. The entire operation took about 2 hours. Finally, they brought Almond to the surface alive. He was rushed to the hospital with head and shoulder injuries and broken fingers. Remarkably, Josh Almond survived. Bunker Cave Rave Party Incident. On a Saturday night in August of 2020, something dangerous was brewing in Oslo, Norway. Bars were closing early because of coronavirus rules. Young people were bored and restless. Deep beneath the city, 70 meters down, sat a massive concrete bunker. It had been built decades ago to protect people during war. For years, it had been sealed off. 3 weeks before that night, a secret message spread through social media. Rave Cave? Saturday night, tell no one. The planners made their first critical mistake. COVID rules limited gatherings to 20 people, but they planned for hundreds. Saturday evening arrived with electric anticipation. The entrance was tiny, just 1 square meter. One by one, young people squeezed through and disappeared underground. The organizers made their second deadly mistake. They brought diesel generators to power the party. They sealed the generator room with plastic bags and duct tape to keep noise in. What they didn't know was that diesel generators produce deadly carbon monoxide. By sealing the room, room, they created a poison chamber. Nearly 200 people danced in the bunker beneath the city. It felt magical, like a secret world. But the third mistake was unfolding. Oxygen levels dropped dangerously low with no proper ventilation. Some people felt dizzy and had difficulty breathing. These were symptoms of carbon monoxide poisoning, but people dismissed it as normal stuffiness. One guy kept climbing out for fresh air repeatedly. His trips were saving his life while others stayed inside being slowly poisoned. Without warning, the lights died and the music stopped. 200 people were plunged into terrifying darkness. Someone broke open the generator room door. Carbon monoxide rushed out like a silent tsunami. 3 young men near the door collapsed unconscious immediately. Others rushed to help but were hit by waves of dizziness and nausea. Some dragged their unconscious friends toward the exit. The biggest mistake became clear: only one tiny exit. 200 people in darkness, many sick and fainting, all trying to escape through one small opening. Above ground, police spotted confused young people wandering the streets. When officers approached, the truth came out. At 3:46 a.m., emergency calls went out. Fire trucks, ambulances, and police raced to the scene. Rescue workers descended into the death trap. Carbon monoxide levels could kill in minutes. They found 7 unconscious victims. Miraculously, most people had escaped. 25 people were rushed to Oslo University Hospital. 7 were unconscious fighting carbon monoxide poisoning. 5 were in critical condition, close to death. Even 2 police officers who helped needed treatment.